Hello,
He's Oliver,
she's Lucy,
and you're listening to Anyway Movies,
the podcast for film fanatics and movie maniacs.
the podcast of discussions, debates, and occasional distractions as we talk about all things cinema.
If you like what you hear, be sure to like our Facebook page and follow us on podcasting platforms.
Big shout out to my sister Molly for creating the logo and images for our podcast. Give her a follow on Instagram at _Molly_Joanne_.
Now that's all out of the way, dim the lights, turn the projector on, and let's start the episode.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Anyway Movies. I don't know why, but we always get the giggles right before an episode.
It's good to have this sort of high energy going, I think, so it's fine.
Yes. So as you can tell by today's title, we are going to be talking about The Breakfast Club, which is a film by John Hughes, and it was released in 1985. Oliver, do you want to break down the cast for us?
Yeah, sure. So the main cast is 5 high school students. I don't know why I said it like that.
I guess that's your American accent.
It's something, I don't know. So the 5 students are essentially the high school stereotypes that we all know because they're in every single teen show movie, because no one's original these days, except for the fact that those are all basically based off this movie. So I guess this movie is the original. I don't know why I got so passionate about that.
No, it's a good original, though. It's a good original.
First, we have Emilio Estevez as Andrew Clark, the jock. Judd Nelson as John Bender, the bad boy. Molly Ringwald as Claire, the popular girl, the prom queen, the rich one. Ali Sheedy as Alison Reynolds, my personal favourite character. The outcast, the weirdo. Anthony Michael Hall as Brian Johnson, the nerd, the brain. We have Paul Gleason as Richard Vernon, Dick, basically. And we have John Capeless as Carl, the janitor.
I mean, it's a solid cast. I have to get that out there.
It is.
So let's just start with overall thoughts, spoiler-free thoughts. What did you think of the film, Oliver?
Well, going into it, I had certain expectations about it because this was the first time I'd ever watched it. But it's one of those movies where everyone seems to know it, even if they've never seen it.
Yeah.
And it's one of my dad's favorite films. And when we first decided about reviewing it, you were so excited. And so I had these expectations. And the only thing I knew going in was the song.
Yeah.
And that it's about kids in detention. That's all I knew. So I went in and I was like, I really hope I like it. And I ended up liking it.
Oh, good.
It was definitely quite a slow start for me. I remember watching it and I was liking it, but like in the first 50 minutes of the film, I was just kind of watching it and I wasn't really connecting with any of the characters as much as I had hoped to.
Mm-hmm.
But then the scene happened when they were all running through the school halls trying to get back to the library before the teacher. And I was like, okay, I'm kind of into this. And then I really liked the scene when they all got high and started dancing. I was like, I really like this. And then when they were all sat in the circle, I was like, okay, now this is it. And I got into it. And by the end of it, I was like, I really like this film.
No, I really like it as well. It's not one of my favorites, by a long stretch. I do have problems with it, but when I watch it, it's just a really, really good film to see, and I would recommend it to anyone who hasn't seen it yet. It's a classic for a reason.
Oh yeah.
It has so many great messages and that still relate today, weirdly enough.
Yeah. That was That surprised me at how relatable it is.
Despite the fact that it was filmed in the 80s, it's very strange that some of the topics that came up are still pretty prevalent
Yeah,
in 2021. It's very weird, but it makes it even more watchable in this day and age anyway. I mean, it is dated in terms of style and all of that sort of thing, but it hasn't dated in terms of substance, which is quite good for a film. I mean, 1985 isn't that old, but it is quite old to us.
yeah, it was. That's the thing. It came out before either of us were born, and so
Mm,
for us, it feels like it was a whole lifetime ago.
yeah.
But really,
It's been 36 years.
there you go.
36 years since this movie came out.
And that's not that really isn't that long.
No, no, it's not. Right, so let's go on to our points, our good points. What did we like about the film? Is there anything that particularly stood out to you, or any particular performance that you might want to highlight? I don't know. Just go off.
I love the character of Alison. I love her so much.
I do as well.
She's just so out there and bizarre, and she's the weird kid, the outcast, the one no one understands. But then she's just genuinely like a real person.
Yeah.
Not to get too into it now, because I'm sure we'll talk about it a bit more when we get into the spoiler section. But the scene where they're all sat around and she lies to get Claire to admit to something, and then she's just like, "Oh yeah, didn't I say I'm a compulsive liar?" And I just thought that was a really funny scene. Like it had built up so well, and then it had like reached this apex, and then at the end she's like, "Oh yeah, by the way, I just said that to get you to talk."
I just think for a character who doesn't speak for like the first 40 minutes of the film, she had like such an impact. Like, you didn't really know what to think of her at first. I mean, when I first watched it, I was thinking, is this character actually going to speak throughout the film, or is she just literally going to be silent the entire time and just make weird facial expressions? Because I would have been quite happy with that, to be honest, because, I think everyone knows a sort of silent kid who's sort of in the back of the classroom who doesn't really say anything. So I thought it was trying to kind of convey that sort of character. But when she actually started speaking, you started to find out more about her. She left such an impression, and I think that that's really good considering that she didn't have as many lines as the rest of the characters.
It was so funny because because the very first line in the whole film is just vodka,
Yes,
and I'm like, well, if that's the first line,
it tells you everything you need to know.
like they're on their way to the vending machine, and she's asked, "So, what do you like to drink?" And she's like, there's like a 10-second pause. She doesn't say anything. She's just staring at the guy, and then out of nowhere, she just goes, "Vodka." This is my type of character because I feel like she's very much played up because it's a movie.
Yes,
So
yeah.
so I kind of just thought she was going to be there for comic relief, and in some ways she was. But then she ended up being in my opinion, one of the more realer characters. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they're all pretty real, but there was something about her that grabbed me straight away. And I connected to her in a way that I didn't connect with the others.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the highlight for me. What about you?
So my favorite character is Carl.
Really?
But basically, Carl is the janitor, and janitors get this sort of background that they're not well paid, they're dumb, they're stupid, like this whole stereotype that they're just not cut out for real work, in quotations. So they do cleaning jobs instead to cover the fact that they can't actually do anything else, which, is a horrible stereotype and is brushed past in this film. In a film filled with stereotypes, the one person who isn't is Carl. He is not dumb, he is not stupid, he is not any of those things, because janitors aren't. he is probably the most human character in this film. And even though he does have flaws, like he does maybe say the wrong things to the students at some point, but that scene with Vernon in his office when he says, if you were 16, what would you think of you? Just hit. And I don't know why, because I'm nowhere near as old as any of them two. but it just sort of said to me, like, wow, this man has so much wisdom. What the hell? And you understand why he and Brian have that sort of mentor together that's probably not really in the film enough. I don't think enough time is dedicated to that, but it's there. And I can understand why that is, because someone as clever as Brian has probably learned all of his wisdom from Carl. And I just love the way they've written him. I like the way that he was portrayed. And I don't think he gets enough love.
It's funny you should say that.
Why is it funny that I should say that?
Because my I don't dislike the character of Carl. I just kind of feel like if you took him out the movie, not much would have changed.
Oh yeah, for sure. I completely agree with that. Like there was no reason for him to be there.
Exactly.
There was no reason for him to be there, but I think his role in Vernon's sort of development, I think that might have been the reason why. I just don't think there was enough of him really to completely cement his place in the movie.
That's what I mean. Like I like the idea of his character, and like you said, I like the sort of mentorship kind of feel that it had between him and Brian. Like at the end when they're walking out and Brian says bye and he says bye Brian and they're all just walking past. I thought that was really sweet. But
It's so cute.
I just wish that there was more of him in there because I feel like there wasn't enough to, like you said, cement him. It didn't feel like he was needed.
Yeah, but I don't know. I quite liked him, and like when I've been looking up reviews and stuff, barely any reviews have mentioned him. And you know, he is still a member of the cast. This is a very small cast,
Yeah.
and I just think he needed to be mentioned. So yeah, I just love that scene between him and Vernon. It's one of my favorite scenes from the film. So
Can we also give Paul Gleason some props? Because when you play a character that makes you hate the character, then you're playing it right.
oh my goodness, he is so good in this film. I could not.
Like
Like,
I despised his character so much because of how much of just a bully he was. But
yeah,
he did it so well.
he really did. And you know, it could have so easily been pantomime villain. It so easily could have been really over the top and very, very stereotypical. But he tried to play it down a little bit, which made him a bit more sort of menacing in a way. And the words he was saying just sort of really struck a chord, even though I wasn't in his class, but I felt like I was getting told off.
Oh, I know what you mean. He was very real.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's what I like with the entire cast actually. They are very real, even though they are basically just being stereotypes. And I really like how that's sort of portrayed in a way and written. Like the script is really good for that as well. Like props has to go to the script as well.
Okay, so who's your least favorite character?
I actually don't have one. I mean, probably Vernon because he's an asshole, but it's to do with the character, not the actor. So I pretty much like every single character in this film, which is good because, like I said before, it's a small cast. So if there was one actor that was out of line, it would have not worked for me. I don't think because it would have been that one character that would have just taken me out of it. But
Mm,
I think everybody did their parts really well. I think.
agreed.
So, this is the spoiler section. If you have not seen The Breakfast Club yet, go and watch it and then come back. But if you have seen The Breakfast Club, then feel free to listen on as we delve deeper into the storyline.
Can we talk about that scene when they're all just sat down and they all start telling about the reasons why they're there.
Yes, gladly.
Because this was the scene for me that made me be like, okay, no, I like this film.
Hmm.
And it went on for so long, but it did not feel like it was dragging at all.
No, it almost reminded me of a play.
Yeah,
Like, like this whole film could easily be a stage play.
that would be so interesting.
And this is the scene that sort of cemented that for me. I remember looking at the scene and thinking, this would be a really good scene to do during like an acting exercise or something. And then as I actually got into the film and into the story and into what they were saying, I was like, God, it didn't have to go this deep, but it did.
I know I was watching it and I was like, I thought this was supposed to be like a feel good film. For a while it was that way. I mean, they'd literally just all gotten high and they were all dancing on the tables and skipping around. Where did that go?
It's weird how fast they turn from being all happy and smiley and dancing and then into that circle when they're talking about their lives, and then you think back to those dancing scenes, those horrible things that they were talking about in that circle were still going on in their lives, but they had this sort of front, and they have this front on throughout the entire film when they keep bantering each other and insulting each other and stuff like that, and they don't know who they're talking to, they don't know the lives of these people and how they can potentially trigger somebody into thinking about their lives. It's like when Bender starts acting out what his dad's like towards him, and then everyone starts getting uncomfortable because they've realized that they might have judged Bender too soon. I
Yeah,
mean, Bender is a dick. Don't get me wrong. Like, he is a horrible person. But after that, um, I think that's when you start thinking, right, all of these characters probably have something going on that makes them put on this stereotypical front. And then this circle scene cements the fact that they're not stereotypical at all. They have, you know, they all have issues, they all have problems, and they speak it out to each other. And I think it's a wonderful scene.
I think my favourite part of this scene, other than Alison getting Claire to admit that she's a virgin, the part when Brian asks Claire on Monday what's going to happen, the whole I consider you my friends after today, and they all agreed. And then he goes, so what about Monday? Are we still going to be friends? And Claire's like, truth? No. And I was just sat there in genuine awe at how like just natural these conversations were.
Yeah, I just make you think what did happen on Monday.
Oh my God, yeah. I want to
And
know.
I want to know, but I'm kind of glad that we didn't, to be fair, because it kind of leads that question on. But I quite liked how, because of how long that conversation had been going on for, Claire just thought, I know enough of these people now, I might as well be honest with them. And then the way that sort of escalates into then Brian's confession, which I think is one of the best acted moments of the entire film. Yeah, it's so good at starting off like all banter and all happiness, and then slowly descending into, okay, what are our lives really like?
Yeah.
But I do have to say, the biggest plot twist in the entire film is Alison saying that she only went to detention because she had nothing better to do. That was the biggest twist for me.
It was, she said that, and I genuinely felt so sad for her. But the fact that she went from being very isolated and she didn't have any friends to being in a situation where she was able to open up about her problems as well as listen to other people and to get a group of friends, even if it was just for a day. Say if on Monday happened and they didn't speak to each other again, it was kind of bittersweet because
Yeah.
she had nothing better to do, but she also had friends for a day, and it was just my heart goes out to Alison so much. I love her so much. Don't know if I said that enough already.
When I first watched the film, there's a bit where Claire is talking about how sad she is because she feels like she has to impress her parents all the time, and that, because she comes from a rich background, she's very annoyed at her parents always telling her what to do and her curfews and stuff like that. And then out of nowhere, Alison goes, "Ha!" like that, and then sits back in her chair. And I remember first watching that and thinking, okay, was that just Alison being weird? Or was that her laughing at the fact that Claire is upset? Now I realise the reason Alison does that is because she's kind of saying in that one word, at least you have parents that care about you.
Yeah,
I I don't have a family that cares about me at all. The whole reason I'm here listening to your whiny ass is because I have nothing better to do because my parents don't care. Hell, my parents probably don't even know that I'm here.
yeah. When they were talking, when she said, "My parents ignore me," and that's literally all she said about it, but that's all she had to say.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, damn.
Oh, it's so good when you watch it multiple times because the actors are just so good at having that sort of subtle, they know what their character's background is, so they have these subtleties all the way through the film that suddenly come to light during that circle scene. It's amazing to see that sort of develop as the film goes on, and when you start to learn more about them, it's amazing what truths they tell and what stories come to light, and you start actually thinking, God, they're not stereotypes at all. What was I thinking? As an audience, we judge them as well at first,
Oh yeah,
and I think the film tells on the audience a lot. They almost do a fourth wall break. They're like, "Ha! You really thought these people were stereotypes? Look no further. Wait until you finish this film, Jesus." So now we have established the fact that we both like the film.
yeah,
Is there anything that maybe you weren't 100% okay
y-
with?
yes. The two things that stick out to me the most is I mentioned it briefly before, but the first 50 minutes of the film, I just wasn't really invested. It kind of felt like it was a movie that was on in the background and I was watching it, but I wasn't.
Right, yeah.
And there were like little moments in there where I would be like, okay. And then I would shut off again. And it wasn't until like I think it's like 53 minutes in, and that's when um the scene again when they're running through the school, that's when I started to get into it. And I think maybe it's because I set the expectations a little too high for myself because of all the things I've heard about it. But it took me so long to get into it that I almost shut it off just because I just wasn't seeing what everyone else seemed to be seeing.
Mm,
I'm glad I didn't. I just wish it didn't take me so long to get into it.
yeah.
And the other thing I'd say is, though the characters do very much feel like real people, and I do really like how they were all acted, sometimes it kind of felt like they were jumping from one extreme to the other. Like they would be shouting and screaming at each other, saying, I hate you. And then the next thing, they're like the best of friends.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely understand that.
Because when they first get there, I first thought that it was going to be like the two popular people. They're going to pick on the smart kid. No one's going to really pay attention to the one sat at the back. The bad guy was just going to, not pay attention, do his own thing. And that wasn't really the case. They were all kind of already, they weren't friends with each other, but they seemed to be civil enough with each other, or at least Andrew and Claire and Brian were, more or less. Then they're all shouting and saying they don't like Bender. They kind of take the mick out of the fact that Alison doesn't talk. Then they're all buddy buddy. Claire says, I hate you to Bender, and then 5 minutes later, they're hooking up in the basement or wherever he was locked in. So, yeah, I feel like the pacing of the relationships was a bit off at times. That didn't necessarily ruin my enjoyment of the film, and it didn't make me want to stop for a moment, like my first point, but it did. Once I was in it, I was okay, but it took me a while as well because of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
Okay, I have two qualms. So I have one. Why the hell did they give Alison a makeover?
Yeah.
I did not like that. I like the makeover was nice, don't get me wrong, but I was expecting her to not like the makeover and the message to be, oh no, I prefer the way that I was before. And I get that it was supposed to be a bonding moment between Claire and Alison. And I understand why the scene was in there, but I didn't like that she ended up just staying like that. Because I quite like her style. I don't know, like, you
Yeah.
know,
It was edgy and grungy and cool.
yeah. Well, I mean, Claire's great too, but the reason that Alison stands out is because she's different from Claire. I mean, I think if these two people were the same person, one of them wouldn't be in the film. So I don't know why they made the decision to kind of make Alison look a bit like Claire at the end. And then this is kind of piggybacking off what you've just said about the relationships. I hated the fact that there were relationships at the end. I didn't like it. I didn't like the fact that Andrew only found Alison hot right after her makeover. For this to be a good relationship, he should have liked her when she was being awkward and quiet, because that's what she's like in real life. And also the fact that Bender had treated Claire horribly throughout 3/4 of this film, and then suddenly they're together.
Yeah, that doesn't really make sense.
I mean, if it was a longer film and it was more fleshed out, I'm sure it would have worked. But with the length that it was, I think like you, I think not enough time was set on the relationships, and I don't think that they were necessary. And also, I think that if the relationships never happened, it would have left more of a mystery about what happened on Monday. Because you can't just start kissing in the car park and then on Monday ignore each other. Something's got to happen, right? But I sort of wanted it to lead off like maybe they didn't meet ever again. And this detention never happened again. It was all just a memory. And I think with the relationships, it kind of defeats that purpose.
It didn't make sense, like the way that the parents were described, and like the whole idea of Bender being good to a good way to sort of piss off Claire's parents, and yet she kisses him right in front of the car and then just gets in, and we don't see anything about that. Alison and Andrew kissing, and then he gets. This part actually annoyed me because in that scene they kiss, and you can see his dad's car at the end of the road just stopped, and then when he pulls away, the car starts moving, and I'm like, why not just have him driving from further away so he would get there at the same time, or why not have the car waiting a bit closer so it's not just stopped waiting for its cue and then moving. Like it was literally, and they are talking, and they kiss. Okay, turn on the engine, and they pulled away. Go.
So basically, you're saying the car needed to have some acting lessons.
Basically.
Oh, I wonder if that car did anything else. I wonder if it's been in any other films.
Probably not after that performance.
Yeah, but overall, those were my only two qualms, really, which were nearer the end of the film. That sort of every time he's kind of ended it on a bitter note, because I sort of hope, after such a good film, I wish it had a better ending for me. But I think that whole scene with Bender punching his hand up in defiance, I think that sort of cements it, because it's just I know this word is thrown around a lot, but it truly is an iconic ending. Everybody knows that ending.
See, I don't know if I like that as the ending.
Oh, okay.
Like nothing, there's nothing bad about it, but it just kind of seems like he's walking and he knows he's in a movie, so he's
Yeah, okay, yeah.
it doesn't make sense for him to do that because we've seen what he's like by himself. Like he keeps himself busy, really, doesn't he? Like the second he's locked in the cupboard, he sneaks out. The second they're trapped in the hall, he decides to go by himself to distract the teacher. So for him just to be walking by himself and then for him just to raise his fist in the air out of nowhere for no reason doesn't seem to make sense to me. Like I said, it feels like he knows he's in a movie and it's like, oh, this will be a strong ending pose. One thing I noticed as well is all the boys had like a monologue.
Yeah.
Like Bender had about his and the way his dad abuses him and his mom encourages it but doesn't stand up to the dad. And then Andrew talks about his relationship with his dad and how he feels like he needs to be a bully to live up to his dad's expectations. And he does things that he doesn't think he should but can't help to because he feels like he needs to do that for his dad's approval.
Mm-hmm.
And then Brian has his whole section about when he's talking about why he's in Saturday detention. And that's all one take as well. I don't know if you noticed, but like the camera's just
Yeah.
panning around the circle. I thought that was really cool. But then the girls don't have that.
Yes. It's a product of its time.
It's like
I mean, Claire does have a lot, to be fair.
I'm not saying they don't have enough lines because I think their lines were given out fairly well, and for their characters, it made sense. Like Alison being quiet for the first half of the movie worked, and she got plenty to talk about in the second half. So I'm fine with that. But it just feels like the three guys in detention have monologues about these deep reasons why they are in Saturday detention, and then
Claire has where I'm rich.
well, it's like the majority of Claire's character is just being teased about the fact whether she's a tease or a virgin.
Yeah.
And then the only thing we get from her home life is that her parents use her to get back at each other, but that doesn't really give an explanation as to why she's there.
Mm-hmm.
The most that Alison got, the most she seemed to speak in one section was again when she was teasing Claire and lying to her to try and get her to admit to the fact that she was a virgin. Also, why is that always a thing in like teen movies and TV shows? Like, why does that matter?
I know, I've always thought this. Like, I don't think I've ever had a conversation like that with college people, never mind high school kids.
Like, no one cares, genuinely.
No. I mean, back at high school, everyone was wondering, oh, who's going out with who? But no one was talking about who's sleeping with each other. Like, it was mainly just, oh, do you know that she's broken up with him or he's broken up with her? It was never about whether someone was a virgin or not. That I've actually never had a conversation like that with anybody, not even my closest friends, actually. So yeah, it might just be a product of its time. It might just be an American thing. I don't know.
I have a question for you.
Yes, go on.
Do you know why it's called the Breakfast Club?
You see, this was my question because the only meal you see them have is lunch. So, but no, do you have an answer?
Well, I googled it, and I do.
Go on then.
So
Enlighten us.
so the writer and director John Hughes, apparently his son's friend. I don't know if his son's friend came up with it or if he just mentioned it, but their school, that's what they called their detention.
Right.
So it was called that by students and staff. If you went to detention even just once, you were officially or unofficially, I guess, a member of the Breakfast Club. So that's where the name came from.
Did not know that.
I was confused because it's called the Breakfast Club, but then no one calls it the Breakfast Club until the very end when Richard Vernon's reading the essay, just saying, and at the end it goes, sincerely, the Breakfast Club. And I'm like, okay,
Oh, that's cool. But I also have a question to ask you as well.
okay.
Speaking of the lunch scene, who do you think had the best lunch?
Oh my God, it has to be Andrew. Like,
I just could not when he just kept putting loads of food out of his bag, and it's just Bender and Claire's faces. They just get me every time.
they're clearly jealous.
Of course they are.
Claire's there with her sushi tray. Like she deliberately brings a separate pot to pour soy sauce in.
I love it. I absolutely love that scene. And then when you think Bender couldn't get any worse, he goes to bother poor Brian. And then don't even get me started on Alison's.
Hey, the girl know what she likes.
I mean, I don't even know, was it crisps that she was putting on there and then loads of salt? Or was it cereal and sugar?
I think it's cereal and sugar.
It's cereal and sugar.
Yeah.
Oh, God. It was so good. And told you everything you need to know about the characters by just the way they had their lunch.
Oh yeah.
And then the fact that Bender starts going on about everyone else's lunch to cover up the fact that he didn't actually have any lunch. So
I liked how he went up to Brian. He's like, "So Brian, what are we eating today?"
he just slaps his hand.
Oh,
Poor Brian.
but like you said about it, the characters, it's like the rich girl having quite a small eclectic dish with separate components. The jock and the wrestler, because he would have to add pounds on. Maybe he's trying to get into the next weight class. And then he had Brian, who's is all neat and he's got a soup, and like it's just very homely. And then you've got Alison doing her thing. It's like she deliberately packed the sandwich and brought the cereal separately, just so if anyone saw, they wouldn't make a fuss of why is there, why are you having a cereal sandwich? And then she was like, right, now that I'm here, take out that meat, empty all these sugar sticks. She seemed to enjoy it, and that's the point.
Yes. As long as she enjoys her food, we have no issue. Right, so what is your final score?
Ooh, my final score out of 10 for the Breakfast Club. I'm gonna go 6 table shuffles out of 10.
Oh, I love that. Well, I'm going to go one up from you, and I'm going to give it 7 table shuffles out of 10.
I really have an urge to jump on a table and shuffle.
We do love the 80s dance scene that was in every 80s film. That had to be in there, didn't it?
Well, it looks like a lot of fun.
It did. Oh my God.
That's another thing I do want to quickly say before we end it up. They all seem to look like they were really enjoying themselves.
Yeah, they did.
And I
It looked
really,
like such a close cast.
yeah, because when you have such a small cast, it can go either way, really, can't it?
Oh, definitely. And I think if they all hated each other, I think we would have been able to tell as well because they were very young when they filmed it. So I think you definitely would have been able to tell. Yeah, great film. I'm really glad we did this today. I've loved it.
Oh, me too.
So, if you enjoyed this as much as we enjoyed recording it, then you can follow Anyway Movies. You can like our Facebook page, and we are also on every single podcasting platform that your little noggin can think of, including Spotify, Google Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Anchor, and we also have a YouTube channel. So you can subscribe to us on there as well.
Let us know what you thought about today's episode. Let us know if you've watched The Breakfast Club, what you thought of it. Did you like it? Did you not? Your favourite character? And suggest any other classic films you might like us to review one day.
Yes, we definitely want to do more classic films. So if there's a film that you think that me and Oliver would particularly like, then let us know. We'll be more than happy to watch and review it for you guys.
Like, we do have a couple listed, but we're always looking to add more.
Always looking to add more. There are so many films out there, honestly. Like, if we did this podcast every single week until we were 90, we still wouldn't cover every single film that's on the planet. So we're always looking for new suggestions.
With that being said, we'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week. Don't you forget about us.
As you walk on by, doom, 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 will you call our names?